Now let's talk about Spider-Man 2. Okay, so this is referred to by many as, including Tom Holland, as one of the greatest superhero films of all time. Okay, and it's for good reason. Before we started watching this that night, right? We had a break. We had pizza time between the first movie, the second film,
Delicious.
and we were talking about which one do you prefer more, and you said I prefer the first movie. And Robert and I looked at each other and said, okay, wait a minute. Let's ask him after the second film. And now I'm here asking you on film. Which is the better film, Spider-Man 1 or Spider-Man 2?
It's Spider-Man 2.
Yep.
It's Spider-Man 2. There's just too much goodness in this movie. And honestly, like growing up, it was always a battle between 1 and 2. You know, it's always a tie between 1 and 2, because I just think that that first one really is perfect. Like that first one.
Yeah.
And I've rewatched the first one more than the second one. You know, I've seen the first one so many times. I could quote the whole thing. I love it. But the second one, man, once you put it on and you experience it, it's like it is giving so much more than what that first one did. You know,
Yeah.
it basically feels like a remake of the first one, similar to what Sam Raimi did with Evil Dead 1 and 2. It seems like he just did the same thing again, but even better.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I wonder if this is why this conflict was in you. Was it because of the difference between theatrical and director's cut? Because we that night watched not Spider-Man 2, we watched Spider-Man 2.1, which has extra footage in it, different takes of scenes. And was that ever a part of why you weren't so sure?
No, when I always compared them, I always think about the theatrical versus the first one. I love watching 2.1 just because it gives us that extra combat and also some golden nuggets, like the scenes where he's in class and he's, you know, drawing MJ with the heart and stuff like that, and drawing his own self with the split
Half of Spider-Man, half Peter Parker.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it tells us a lot about what he's going through right now. Him
Right.
struggling to deal with the duality of life itself, and you know, balancing all these things that we all go through in our daily life. And so I really like 2.1, but if I had to save one or the other, I would always pick the theatrical cut, because that for me is what that movie is. 2.1 is just like, all right, let's add the deleted scenes
Right.
as well, you know. So for me, it's the more the merrier. Same thing with Avatar. You know, Avatar has an extended cut. I always watch the extended cut now because I know what the theatrical cut is, but now I get those extra scenes that are goated as hell. You know?
Yeah. Do you think that, I mean, it's funny because I've always considered the theatrical cut the one that people refer to as one of the best superhero films of all time. Would that be said about 2.1?
I mean, I think so. I don't think there are enough changes in 2.1 for it to go down lower in quality. I think there are some scenes that are like, okay, this doesn't belong here, or this goes on for too long, which makes the theatrical cut a superior version of the movie. But I don't think overall it'd be like, okay, this is no longer one of the best superhero movies of all time, because the important scenes that hit still hit immensely. You know, the train scene, the scene with Aunt May, the confession, her handing him the $20, him confessing his secret that was making him sick to his stomach, and having the responsibility to admit to his own guilt. It's those scenes for me that are like, this is this transcends the genre. This is a drama. This is a drama of a boy who is just struggling to figure out what he really who he wants to be in his life.
But unfortunately 2.1 replaced Mr. Aziz's go with the worst take.
With a normal go.
Go instead of go. One of my favorite moments ever. Yeah. And also that scene with the elevator.
That was just too much. No.
Brand of children's books. I don't know. A cologne called Thwip. Then even Toby's like, man, I ain't got parks, man. Put that shit away.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is a movie that's obviously about something else. The main theme, in my opinion, the main theme is um main themes are sacrifice, and then it turns into allowance, because this is a movie where it's kind of about not being one thing. It's about balance in your life. You know what I mean? You can be Spider-Man, but you can also have love in your life.
Right.
And that's very important because that's an evolution from the first film. First film is kind of black and white in terms of its ideology, and that's appropriate because it's him starting out. Here, it's about kind of maturing and kind of understanding that you can be a hero, but also be a person at the same time.
Right. No, yeah, I completely agree. I think for me, it's choice.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's choice, especially with those scenes with Uncle Ben once again, when Uncle Ben's like, take my hand, son. You already did this. It's just the second one is all about Peter forgetting who he is, because sometimes that can happen down the path of, righteousness. Sometimes you can lose your way. And that's what happens. He loses his way for a little bit because he's envious of what his version of ideal life could be.
Yeah.
But, that's what it takes sometimes to be a hero. It's to sacrifice what you truly want, and he becomes what he absolutely needs to be because he has a gift. He's not normal and he never will be. And that's just who he has. That's what he has to accept.
Yeah. And I love that you bring up choice, because the ultimate character that represents choice is the villain of this film, and it is Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus, Otto Octavius. This is a character who is really dealt a horrible hand in life, and he chooses to go forward with that. He chooses to not grieve. He chooses to just pursue this dream of a renewable energy source. And from his position, he's thinking, quote unquote, that he's doing the right thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it really does come down to his ego, and I love that they keep that element of the character, because the character is a complete narcissist in the comics. He's like the complete braggadocious. He says Bach in the comics. And in this, they don't go that far. They don't make him completely socially inept like other versions. He has a wife, he has a charm to him, but there's still that little nugget of I'm right, you're wrong.
Right.
Yeah. So what did you feel about Otto Octavius in this film?
I really love their relationship together. I love that he kind of appears to Peter Parker as a mentor, as another father figure similar to Green Goblin. And I love that you mentioned that he is kind of the embodiment of what this theme of the movie is, which is choice. He can choose to either be humble and not pursue this crazy dream that can risk the lives of everybody in New York and be with his loved one, Rosie, or he can, continue to cause all this destruction and havoc in New York. And that's unfortunately what he does. And in the end, before it's too late, he learns that he can choose to stop this, through Peter Parker. Peter Parker says, you don't have to be like this. And of course, Dr. Octopus doesn't want to die a monster, and makes the ultimate choice and sacrifice to save everybody as well. So I really love this portrayal of the character. I think Alfred Molina does a wonderful job and brings another one of Spider-Man's iconic villains as one of the most memorable cinematic villains.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he was the one shown in the first trailer saying hello to Peter, and it was great. It was everything. God.
Yeah, I think it's also crazy that we're going to see both of these two characters like talk to each other. That to me is like something that I felt like was impossible. But of course, Kevin Feige strikes again. Rosie, I love this boy.
Thank you, John Watts. So obviously, when it comes to choice, Peter chooses to let go of Spider-Man for a while, and they pursue the storyline Spider-Man No More. He loses his powers. He gives it up for love. How does this, in your opinion, reinforce the theme of responsibility?
Honestly, I just think when it comes, it's also what Dr. Octopus says as well. He says, look, the intelligence that you and I have, not only is it a privilege, again, it's a gift. It's something that should be always utilized for the greater good of mankind. And again, it's similar to what Uncle Ben tells him. What you have is a gift. And I just love that it's reinforced through a different perspective, through this villain.
Yeah. Yeah, and it hits hard when you see what happens to this guy, and he just goes off the deep end in a big bad way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's also terrifying too. When you get that hospital scene and all the arms are killing everybody like it's a horror movie, it's truly terrifying. And you almost think to yourself, there's no coming back from this. Like he is irredeemable. There's no way. But
Yeah.
of course they make it happen because Sam Raimi is a master.
Yeah, he's a legend, and I love that scene also because it is you made a great comment during the screening. This is what happens when you get a horror director to
Mhm.
make your comic book movie, and it's so true because that scene is disturbing. First of all, it's horror. It's just perfectly. It's perfect. First of all, it's a perfectly edited, choreographed film scene in every sense of the word. Like it is perfect. There's an Evil Dead reference in it with the
Yep.
chainsaw, and it's awesome. And I love that scene is ripped straight from a couple comics. You know, there in Ultimate Spider-Man, there's a with the introduction of or one of the introductions, the reintroduction of Doctor Octopus. There's a scene where he is bandaged up with the eyes, and they're talking to him, and he kills all these people without him really knowing what happened, you know. And it's another example of Sam Raimi taking the comics as a perfect source and utilizing it perfectly.
Yeah. And that's also another reason why I have this movie so highly regarded is because we are horror fans. You know,
Mhm.
we know the work that's come before. And so moments like that, when you see the chainsaw and stuff like that, it means everything, you know, because we know what it's referencing to. We know it's an Ash Evil Dead reference. And
Mhm.
for me, that something like that can take a scene from like quality of a C to an A. You know, that's why it's so important to watch so many movies because you can get your levels of emotion and excitement just get taken to a whole nother place.
Yeah, and you know, part of me wishes that Bruce Campbell was the doctor in that scene. So
Mm,
he would get the chainsaw and everything, but I'm happy he was the usher.
that would have been really cool.
That would have been pretty cool.
That would have been pretty wicked. I'm sure we will see Bruce Campbell with the chainsaw again in
Yeah.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness when Sam Raimi makes Evil Dead Marvel canon.
I, come on, Sam, do me a favor, man. I mean, we're not going to get a season 4 of Ash versus Evil Dead, unfortunately. And I know what Bruce Campbell has recently been saying, I'm done playing that but he's been saying that for years, man. Literally, I'm just asking for one scene, one shot even of him just chopping down Marvel zombies with the chainsaw.
It's happening. How do you, if I'm Sam Raimi and I got my start from a horror movie, how do you not do Marvel Zombies? How?
I don't know, man. Bruce
It's
Campbell's
the
talking all this crap.
it's the perfect opportunity to do it.
I agree. I agree. Hey, man, I agree. That was when I first heard it was Sam Raimi. That was one of the first things I was thinking. I thought of Army of Darkness versus Marvel Zombies, the comic, where
Good.
Bruce meets the heroes and whoops everyone's ass. Okay, I'll take that as a movie. Thank you. All right, all right, all right. Let's talk about very key scenes, in my opinion. Peter telling the truth to Aunt May. How did this scene shape Peter's development as a character for you? Because this is obviously a big release for him. I was telling you my theory that this was part of what brought him back to his powers, him confessing.
Mhm.
So, what do you think about that?
I love it because the way that it's framed in the movie is that secrets can really make us sick inside. You know, Dr. Octopus tells him this because what else was Peter keeping from the world? His love for Mary Jane.
Mm-hmm.
And so another theme I think of this is truth and how important that is to have in your life, integrity and being honest and always communicating. Because when you communicate, then um, your probability of having issues will decrease. If you're honest, and you're a good person and you confess to your sins, like in this movie, then you can heal. You can begin to heal, or kind of have like a rebirth of yourself, right? Which is why we strongly believe that's why he gets his powers, is because there's nothing else holding him back now. Now he feels free. Now he truly can feel like he can make amends for that death, which is why I love when they reincorporate like a new scene with Uncle Ben, and he tells him all these things, like hold my hand, you have courage, you have justice, solidarity, all these things that I have instilled in you. Take my hand, son. At first he doesn't take it, but once he confesses, that's when he truly takes it. And so I love that character development for him with Aunt May, and I love how she reacts too. She reacts in a very real way.
Mhm.
It's too much for her to handle, and you almost think in that moment, did he just lose another family member?
Yeah.
But it's what had to be done, and he had the strength to do it. It's respectable.
It is respectable, and it leads to a scene that is so heart-wrenching later on in the film, where Peter comes back to the house. Aunt May is packing up, leaving because the bank is messing with her, and she tells him that she's proud of him, she forgives him. It was very brave of him to do what he did, and gives this great speech about how there's a hero in everyone, and it allows us to sacrifice everything we have to in life. And it's beautifully performed by Rosemary Harris, that's Aunt May in a nutshell. I've always considered Aunt May as the backbone of Peter Parker, ever since Uncle Ben died. My favorite version of the character in comics is definitely the one in the Ultimate Spider-Man book. I'm a big fan of that book, and I think the writing for her specifically is very strong and makes her very real in a way that you're talking about. So I love that scene, and she totally knew he was Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, she totally knew. Not only in that movie, but in the first movie too. She knew, and I love seeing that a lot of the supporting characters knew all along who Spider-Man was. They just never mention it. And Sam Raimi really put the stamp on that act of, I would say, heroism as well, because if they reveal his identity, he would probably be killed by people who hate him. I just love that they keep it a secret. I love that they respect Spider-Man and love Spider-Man so much that they're willing to let him save the day with no harm done to him, with the identity being revealed. I love that scene. It's one of my favorite scenes ever. Again, Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's version, has the best Spider-Man, the best Uncle Ben, the best Aunt May, the best music, the best suit, the best fight scenes, the best villains, the best of everything, the best movie line of all time. With great power comes great responsibility. It's goated for so many reasons.
Certified right now. Right now. Yeah. And we got to talk about this, dude. We have to talk about this. The train sequence.
Of course.
This is, let me ask you this. Is this the scene of the film? And if not, what is? Okay, you just said yeah, but all right.
It's not just the scene of the film. It is the greatest action set piece in a movie. It is the definitive moment in the history of Spider-Man, forever and always will be. Just his ability to stop that train without his mask, surpassing the limitations of his own body, falling to his death to save everybody on that train. That to me is Spider-Man. And for them to carry him, put his hands on his chest, that to me is the best shot of Spider-Man ever. More than any comic panel, more than any video game frame. The hands on his chest holding him. We are one. We are New York. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Right there in one frame. That is Spider-Man. And literally makes me the happiest person in the world when I watch it.
Yeah, I love that theme specifically of the people's relationship with Spider-Man is such an important theme in all the movies
Yeah.
in this trilogy. You know, you have that great scene in the first film on the bridge and everything. You have the train sequence and how that develops. You have in the third film when he comes back as
Yep.
Spider-Man.
Yep. That's literally gonna be the theater when his ass comes back.
They predicted it. They
You know what I mean?
predicted it.
Like that's just what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen. People who don't know Tobey, they're gonna jump out of their seats when they see him. Trust.
Who is that?
No, they're gonna jump out of the seat. Another Spider-Man? Watch, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be bananas. No, we're not gonna be able to hear him speak because everybody's just gonna be yelling.
Honestly, I doubt they even like have dialogue in those seconds of him being there.
Nah, it's just gonna be the music. It's just
Yeah.
gonna be the music for a little bit. Trust.
Yeah, honestly, because you remember in Endgame when they when he got the hammer, Cap got the
Yeah.
hammer and everything, they made a big mistake of having Thor say something right
Mhm.
after because I didn't hear what he said.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
No, not at all. So the last point for Spider-Man 2. Is this a film that other Spider-Man films have to, knowingly or not, live up to?
If they are if they go into themselves thinking we're going to be compared to a movie, this is the one that they got to worry about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think Spider-Man 2, I think when it comes to any new interpretation, what they have to do is always remember the core essentials of their character and tell their story. Every new interpretation should be new. It should be different. But I think what they can never forget are the core aspects of a character, right? They can have different circumstances and they can have a new environment and it can be a new time. But one thing that I think can never change about a character if you are retelling the same story is their heart, who they are. Like that to me, that doesn't make sense. Like with Batman, like again, it goes into the killing thing,
Right.
and we'll spend too much time on that, but it's like with Spider-Man. Like if Spider-Man killed, right? I want to tell a Spider-Man story where he kills. Huh? That's not Spider-Man. I would throw the page away. That
Well,
is not
that's
Spider-Man.
that would probably be more a what if because there are what if books, comics of that concept.
Mhm.
Plenty, of what if Spider-Man killed, what if Spider-Man became the Punisher, what if Spider-Man killed Craven the Hunter, like those exist and those are fun. And I wouldn't mind seeing something like that in terms of like, say we're dealing with a movie about the multiverse, right?
Mhm.
Like the what's his name? Spider-Man Noir. That dude carries a gun, and he kills Nazis.
Right.
That dude kills. He's during a time of war, he's gonna kill. So I feel that can be dealt with. It's just I don't. It's very similar. You brought up Batman, but I look at it similarly to Superman, the Snyder, depiction early on, where he snaps Zod's neck and everything. Like, there's really no going back from that. And that's your first film. Do you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With characters like that, it's very it. There's gonna be a debate about it.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Spider-Man 2 and other filmmakers that try to make a Spider-Man movie, it's all about living up to the quality of
Mhm.
that Spider-Man. They got to live up to the quality. They got to make sure that suit looks fresh. They got to make sure the music is inspiring. The fight scenes are, you know, better than something that came out 20 years ago. And so far that hasn't really happened.
Well, it's funny. Me adding this question, I didn't know that I would actually get into it with you guys the night we saw the movie. Because I was talking to you, I was talking to Robert about, this. And I think I agree with you guys in that it is kind of a shame that the movies of the same franchise, right? The movies before are way ahead of their time, which is
Mhm.
even now, I agree with that. But at the same time, and this is a point I brought up, I don't know if the newer films should have to be those films again.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like if
Yeah.
I was if you were making a film about Batman, right? And I came up to you and I asked, "Hey, is your name Christopher Nolan?" And then you say no to me. I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, then your movie's like fuck your movie, essentially." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, yeah, for sure. But I think um it doesn't have to be the same thing
mhm,
because I mean, how can it be? But
right.
it should be something special, especially if you're going to reboot this character. Then you have to really believe in the pitch. You have to really believe that this person is going to deliver. That's why I felt like it was a little too soon for some of the Spider-Man reboots. A little
Yeah.
too soon from Tobey's. Like they should have given it some time and a little more thought and allowed the character some room to breathe before retelling his story again. Because look what happened.
Mhm.
Andrew was screwed over, and then we got MCU Spidey, but
Which isn't bad.
not bad because
Right.
now we're gonna see them all together.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, we could talk, we could debate about that. But we're not at homecoming yet. Um, and it's funny. I think that these filmmakers, including John Watts, who's unfortunately got a lot of hate in the past couple of years, which I don't agree with that at all. Um, I think he's thinking of it in a similar way of like, uh, oh shit, what was my point? I was going to bring up a good point.
Brilliant but lazy.
Yeah, right. It was
Did it have to do with it feeling the same?
oh, the reboot
Right.
point of I think like a lot of people agree that these movies were rebooted way too soon,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that there's not enough spacing and time, and it really messes up over everyone, including Tobey, including Andrew, including even Tom to a certain extent, because Tom's going to be, I think, unfairly compared to those other guys because they were right before him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with this third film, they're trying to bring closure to everyone, so those conversations can just die finally.
Right. Yeah. I think there are two types of criticism towards Tom Holland.
Mm-hmm.
One is he's not Tobey Maguire, so this sucks.
Right.
Two is he doesn't feel like Spider-Man. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not fully connected with him there yet. And I find myself sometimes feeling in the latter. I love Homecoming. I
Mm-hmm.
love Far From Home. But there are parts of that movie where I'm like, he doesn't feel like Spider-Man to me. Not yet. But when it gets to those moments where he does, like, come on, Spider-Man, come on. Or when he finally hones into his spider senses and takes out the drones of Mysterio, my God, the final swing of Far From Home. He's not Tobey, but he feels like Spider-Man.
He's on his
And
way.
and
That's something we were
and
definitely saying. Yeah.
and that's what John Watts is doing.
Right.
That's what he's doing. He's allowing room for him to deviate from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man because it will forever any Spider-Man that comes out after will forever be compared. He's leaving some space to deviate from it while also showing us that, hey guys, you're in good hands. He's living up to the plate. He's getting there. I promise.
Yeah, it's funny because these movies are also a very different approach. The new film, and we're not going to spend too much time on this because we got to talk about three. But these movies are definitely a different approach in terms of the story we're telling of Peter Parker, right?
Right.
Because it's the high school era, which the first Spider-Man film, like what? That's like 20 minutes of
Mm-hmm.
it. You know what I mean? They have to really get into it. And not every Spider-Man story is about the things that the Raimi trilogy are.
Right.
They just do those stories so well that everyone who watches them is like, this is what Spider-Man is. But it's like, okay, but there are other comics where it's like Spider-Man hangs out with Thor in Asgard, and it's like Uncle Ben's not on his mind because he's in Asgard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like there are fun stories. There are smaller stories that aren't as the word I brought up that night was as dramatic. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So that's what I appreciate with those the newer films. But we'll get into those on other videos. I promise.